The cameraman, overwhelmed with terror and hopelessness, collapses to his knees as the reality of death closes in. Regret floods his mind, not for the danger he faces, but for the missed opportunity to connect meaningfully with his father. His last conversation had been about something as mundane as asking if he'd eaten dinner. Now, staring at the deadly mandibles of a magic beast ant descending toward him, he wishes he had said something more significant. His heart fills with despair, tears welling in his eyes as he prepares to meet his fate. Just when all hope seems lost, a sharp crack echoes through the air. A warm spray of fluid splatters across his face, causing him to flinch in confusion. He dares to look up, expecting to see his end, but instead finds a long blade impaling the skull of the ant. Following the blade's length, his gaze lands on a mysterious figure clad in black armor. The warrior, swift and precise, retracts their weapon from the lifeless body of the ant, standing tall in the carnage. Meanwhile, back in the TV station's control room, the atmosphere undergoes a dramatic shift. What had started as a lively, almost celebratory environment filled with energy now mirrors the silence of a funeral. The broadcast of the raid had captivated viewers until the terrifying emergence of a winged ant, a creature of unparalleled ferocity, turned the tide. When the decision was made to abruptly shut down the live stream, chaos erupted. The station's phone lines were overwhelmed by viewers, demanding explanations and updates. An anxious employee approaches the executive director, informing him that the volume of incoming complaints has overloaded their system. The feed had been cut just as the magic beasts began slaughtering the hunters, leaving the audience in anxious suspense. The network was caught in a dilemma. Airing scenes of unspeakable brutality, with hunters being gruesomely killed, was unthinkable. Yet the public demanded to know what was happening. Just as tensions in the control room reach their breaking point, a producer notices something on the screen. A figure has appeared on the battlefield. A newcomer, someone whose presence seems to shift the entire course of the battle. This unexpected turn sets off a flurry of activity among the crew. Despite the risk, a unanimous decision is made to resume the broadcast. Hesitation is no longer an option. The fate of the station now hinges on this mysterious figure's actions. The control room prepares to go live once again, knowing that this stranger could decide the future of their entire operation. Jin Woo arrived on Jeju Island in an instant, using his shadow exchange ability to transport both himself and his army directly onto the battlefield. His eyes burned with determination as he led his formidable force of shadow soldiers. Among them were Iron, encased in heavy armor, Igris, the swift and deadly knight, Tusk, the powerful mage, and Tank, the hulking beast. A battalion of orcs marched alongside, their weapons ready for battle. Calm and focused, Jinwoo quickly assessed the situation. Without a word, he glanced at the giant figure beside him, Iron, one of his most trusted soldiers. Iron, immediately understanding the silent command, pounded his chest with confidence, signaling his readiness. He moved forward with purpose, his massive form dominating the battlefield. Taking a deep breath, Iron unleashed a thunderous roar that echoed across the battlefield. The effect of Iron's skill, Shout of Provocation, was immediate. Every ant within range turned its attention toward him, their instincts compelling them to attack the new threat. The swarm surged forward, driven by primal rage, charging at Iron with relentless ferocity. Jinwoo, satisfied with Iron's success in drawing the ants' focus, gave him a brief pat of acknowledgement. Now that the ants were distracted, he summoned the 2 daggers he had claimed after defeating the demon monarch. As the horde of ants closed in, Jinwoo's vision was filled with a tidal wave of black, the creatures screeching as they rushed toward him. Without a second's hesitation, Jinwoo gripped his daggers and sprang into action, moving with lightning speed. In one swift, fluid motion, he cut through the oncoming ants, his movement so fast that he seemed to disappear, leaving behind only a trail of destruction in his wake. Amidst the chaos, Tusk, another of Jinwoo's loyal soldiers, stood watch over the injured members of the strike squad, protecting them as the battle raged on. The hunters, still recovering from the earlier onslaught, could only stare in shock at the sudden change in the fight. They watched as Jinwoo and his army plunged into the heart of the ant horde, Jinwoo moving with deadly precision as he sliced cleanly through the body of an ant, cutting it in two. Jinwoo's shadow soldiers added to the devastation on the battlefield. Igris, one of his most fearsome warriors, crushed an ant with his bare hands, slamming it into the ground before slicing through the remaining creatures with his longsword, his movement swift and merciless. The battlefield was becoming a scene of total annihilation. Tank launched himself into the chaos with fierce determination, crushing ants alive between his massive jaws and using his enormous claws to tear through the rest of the horde. Iron, as always, took a more straightforward approach, smashing the ants beneath his feet. His heavy stomps created a rhythmic beat of destruction as he decimated the creatures without hesitation. The ants couldn't withstand his brute strength, and the battlefield echoed with the sound of their demise. Amid the chaos, Jinwoo sensed the perfect moment to end the battle. A confident smirk tugged at his lips. He knew it was time. Recognizing the decisive turning point, he gave the command, "Arise." In an instant, black hands erupted from the ground, accompanied by deep, resonant moans that reverberated through the cavern. The shadows began to rise. A sudden chill gripped the cameraman as fear washed over him. His heart pounded in disbelief at the unimaginable scene unfolding before him. The ants, which had been defeated just moments ago, were now rising again, but they had changed. Dark, eerie smoke billowed from their bodies, giving them a more sinister and unnatural appearance. The cameraman's mind reeled, barely able to process the transformation. These once-dead ants had become shadowy creatures, devoid of life, yet filled with terrifying resolve. Now, they charged toward the living ants. The unstoppable force they once were now overrun by a sea of darkness. Jinwoo knew that his top priority was to get the hunters to safety before more monsters appeared. Several of them were injured, and he had to act quickly. He rushed to the raid team, summoning healing potions to treat their wounds. The potions only worked if he administered them directly, so he had to personally feed them to each hunter. As Jinwoo carefully gave the potions, he watched as one by one the hunters began to recover. Taegyu, startled by his sudden recovery, inspected himself in disbelief. Jongin and Dongwook's wounds healed rapidly, and Baek stood in awe, unable to believe that their injuries had vanished completely. Yet, despite Jinwoo's efforts, Cha Hai-in remained unconscious. Jinwoo understood why. Her injuries were too severe for his abilities to heal, and she was growing weaker with every passing moment. Time was running out. Though the battle was nearing its conclusion, Jinwoo knew they couldn't afford to stay any longer. More ants could appear at any moment, making the situation even more dangerous. It was critical to evacuate the team, and Jinwoo was ready to lead them out of the cave. Just as he was about to act, a strange sensation washed over him, causing him to pause. Jinwoo's gaze shifted sharply to the other side of the cavern. The Ant King had returned. The ominous presence behind his unease revealed itself with each heavy step. The atmosphere thickened with the creature's menacing aura, and Jinwoo could sense the shift as it advanced. The Ant King, speaking in the chilling voice of Goto Ryuji, declared with unnerving certainty, "The true king is not among those outside." The weight of the words began to sink in for the hunters, who stared in shock as the Ant King continued to approach. Its overwhelming presence dominated the space, and the creature questioned whether there were others whom the humans considered kings. Baek, filled with dread, pieced together the implications. If the Ant King had returned, then Goto Ryuji had already been defeated. Dongwook cursed under his breath, fully grasping the dire circumstances they now faced. Meanwhile, Jinwoo, ever composed, made a swift decision. He instructed Coach Ma to take care of Cha Hai-in, the most critically injured team member. But even as he spoke, his mind raced, assembling the missing pieces of the puzzle. The reason Jinwoo could no longer sense Goto Ryuji's shadow now became chillingly clear. It was because of the Ant King before him. Towering and menacing, the creature seemed to assess Jinwoo, as if questioning whether this human could possibly be the king. Jinwoo, unfazed, acknowledged with mild surprise that this insect could speak. The tension in the air heightened as the two locked eyes, a silent and intense standoff that promised an impending clash. The Ant King, looming over Jinwoo, paused, sensing the powerful energy radiating from him. Without warning, the Ant King unleashed a deafening roar directly into Jinwoo's face. The sound reverberated through the cavern, shaking its very walls. But Jinwoo, far from intimidated, remained still. Instead of reacting with fear, a smirk appeared on his face. He recognized the display for what it was, an insect trying to appear more threatening than it actually was. 5 minutes earlier, the broadcast had abruptly ended, leaving viewers in shock and panic. Confusion spread as everyone questioned the fate of the hunters. Sung Cheol felt a wave of anxiety, fearing the worst. Joo-hae's thoughts raced, unsettled by the sight of the ant that had appeared just before the live feed was cut off. Park Jong-soo seethed with frustration, unable to believe the broadcast had been cut at such a critical moment. Unit, amid the chaos, urgently sought answers, trying to make sense of the situation. News channels scrambled to provide updates, confirming the tragic death of Min Byung-gyu and reporting that the remaining hunters were still trapped in the tunnels. Uncertainty loomed, and no one knew if they would make it out alive. Just as the tension reached its peak, breaking news emerged about an unknown hunter appearing on the battlefield. The live broadcast resumed, and the audience watched in breathless anticipation as the scene unfolded. Meanwhile, in Japan, a tense conversation between Matsumoto and Sugimoto revealed the gravity of the situation. Matsumoto stood frozen in disbelief, his mind struggling to grasp the reality that the ant could speak like a human and had killed Goto. The revelation struck him hard. Sugimoto, closely monitoring the situation, confirmed that the Ant King had returned to the Queen's chamber. This news left Matsumoto even more stunned, especially when Sugimoto reported that the South Korean team appeared to still be alive. Adding to the tension, Sugimoto mentioned additional mana signals coming from another source. With rising urgency, Matsumoto demanded live coverage from the South Korean press. He needed to see it with his own eyes. Back in South Korea, Gina's home was filled with a different kind of tension. Kyung-hee fumbled with the television, which had mysteriously stopped working, much to Gina's frustration. Her thoughts were elsewhere, fixated on her brother Jin Woo, who had left in a rush without much explanation. As Kyung-hee continued fiddling with the TV, Gina suddenly bolted to her room, turning on her phone. Her breath caught in her throat as her eyes widened at the sight on the screen. Her brother, Jin Woo, in the thick of chaos. At the Hunter Association, Go Gun-hee's grip tightened on his armrest, his knuckles white as he watched the scene unfold on television. A flood of emotions surged within him: hope, determination, and anticipation. His associate urged him to stay calm, but Go Gun-hee's eyes were glued to the screen. Jinwoo had arrived, and that changed everything. In the cavern, the Ant King made the first move. With terrifying speed and power, the massive creature charged at Jinwoo, swinging its arm with devastating force. The blow landed hard on Jinwoo's face, almost knocking him backward. But Jinwoo stood his ground, his feet firmly planted as the impact shattered the ground beneath him. Cracks spiderwebbed across the floor as debris flew in all directions. The shock wave from the hit cut through the air, and the cavern trembled under the immense force. Jongin and Baek watched in stunned silence, their eyes wide with disbelief. They hadn't expected Jinwoo to get so close to such a dangerous opponent, nor had they anticipated the sheer power of the Ant King's attack. It became clear that the Ant King was even stronger than Jinwoo had initially expected. Believing he had dealt a lethal blow, the Ant King sneered, his voice echoing across the battlefield as he mocked Jinwoo's weakness, declaring that Jinwoo was unfit to be a king. But to everyone's shock, Jinwoo remained unmoved. With cold determination in his eyes, Jinwoo spat out blood as if it were nothing more than a minor nuisance. His gaze, unyielding and fierce, locked onto the Ant King. Without hesitation, Jinwoo activated his skill, Commander's Touch. His left fist, surging with mana, slammed into the Ant King's abdomen with the force of a cannonball. The impact rippled through the creature's body, causing it to stumble backward as its knees buckled. The Ant King's eyes widened in shock. Before the Ant King could recover, Jinwoo was already in motion. His right fist blurred with speed, connecting with the Ant King's face with a bone-crunching impact. The sheer force of the punch sent the Ant King flying upward, its massive form disappearing into the distance as it hurtled through the air. The creature slammed into the cavern wall with the force of a meteor, caving in the rock around it. The entire cavern shook violently from the impact, the tremors reverberating through the space like thunder. Taegu and the cameraman stood frozen, their mouths agape, and eyes wide with disbelief at the sight of Jinwoo's raw, overwhelming power. Dongwook was equally speechless, stunned by how a hunter, presumed to be a mage type, could possess such incredible physical strength. Even Beck, who had an inkling of Jinwoo's abilities, had not imagined this level of force. It was as if Jinwoo had shattered every expectation. The Ant King, roaring in fury, its eyes blazing with rage, lunged at Jinwoo once again, determined to retaliate. As it advanced, Jinwoo calmly assessed the creature's resilience, noting how its exoskeleton made its body unusually tough. A cold smirk curled on his lips, finding the Ant King's persistence more of an irritation than a threat. The Ant King, gathering all its might, clasped its hands together and swung a massive blow toward Jinwoo. Yet, Jinwoo effortlessly blocked the attack, the sheer ease of his defense a testament to his overwhelming power. They closed in on each other rapidly, and a fierce close-quarters battle ensued. Heavy blows were exchanged with brutal intensity, neither side willing to yield an inch. Jinwoo's arm shot forward, delivering a devastating punch to the Ant King's torso, causing the massive creature to reel back. But the Ant King retaliated swiftly, slamming Jinwoo on the back of the head with a crushing blow. Both fighters were relentless, each attack met with equal force. Jinwoo's aura flared as he unleashed his attacks with unmatched speed and precision, while the Ant King's eyes burned red with fury, countering with deadly strikes. The waves of mana surging from their clash were so powerful that even the cameraman, an A-rank hunter, struggled to stay upright. The pressure of the mana made him feel as though he would pass out, barely able to withstand the overwhelming force radiating from the battle. As the brutal exchange continued, the Ant King started to realize the gravity of the situation. It was losing. For the first time, the Ant King was overpowered in a contest of raw strength, and its mind raced to understand how a human could possibly dominate it like this. Meanwhile, Jinwoo, despite taking some damage, remained relentless. His strikes grew sharper, and the Ant King's once impenetrable exoskeleton began to show signs of wear. Small cracks spiderwebbed across its surface, evidence that Jinwoo's relentless assault was breaking through. With a determined glint in his eyes, Jinwoo launched another devastating punch. The impact caused more cracks to appear in the Ant King's hardened shell, spreading further. The Ant King, now visibly shaken, felt the impending doom. But before it could fully grasp its predicament, Jinwoo seized the moment, his next strike landing squarely on the Ant King's face. The force was so powerful that the creature's head snapped upward, leaving it momentarily stunned. Even its thick exoskeleton couldn't fully absorb the impact, and the Ant King struggled to regain its balance. Desperation filled the Ant King's eyes. In a last-ditch effort, it retaliated by opening its mouth and shooting a venomous needle attached to a long tentacle directly at Jinwoo's face. Jinwoo dodged with lightning speed, but the needle still grazed his cheek. A small victory for the Ant King, who felt a brief moment of satisfaction. At last, it had managed to land a hit. The poison from the venomous needle began spreading through Jinwoo's body. This wasn't just any toxin. It was a lethal paralysis poison the Ant King had gained from consuming a cone snail. Made even more potent by the concentrated mana in the Ant King's body, the venom was deadly beyond measure. The Ant King, confident it had turned the tide, looked down at Jinwoo, ready to deliver the final blow. The Ant King, certain that the poison had taken effect, prepared to strike the final blow. Its mandibles launched forward with full force, aiming to end the fight once and for all. But to its shock, Jinwoo was far from defeated. As the Ant King's attack rushed toward him, Jinwoo raised his left hand, blocking the deadly claw with minimal effort. The Ant King froze, unable to comprehend how Jinwoo could still move, let alone defend himself. Seizing the moment of shock, Jinwoo retaliated. With his right fist, he delivered a devastating punch that sent the Ant King tumbling across the den. The sheer force of the blow left the creature reeling. The Ant King's earlier sense of triumph quickly dissolved into desperation. It had grossly underestimated Jinwoo's strength and resilience. What it had assumed was a battle-ending strike was nothing more than a minor inconvenience to the hunter. As the Ant King scrambled to recover, a notification flashed before Jinwoo's eyes. He had been successfully detoxified. Jinwoo realized that the Ant King's brief surge of confidence stemmed from its belief that the poison had taken effect. However, thanks to his heightened sense stat, Jinwoo could not only resist the toxin, but also perceive the Ant King's emotions. What had once been smug confidence was now a mix of anxiety and nervousness. Jinwoo also sensed his teammates' growing anxiety as the battle dragged on. Not wanting to prolong the fight any further, he prepared for his next move. With lightning speed, Jinwoo leaped into the air, aiming a powerful flying kick at the creature. However, when his foot struck the ground, the Ant King had already disappeared. Baek and Yongin, watching the battle in stunned silence, scanned the cavern in confusion, trying to locate the creature. But Jinwoo remained calm. He looked up, spotting the Ant King hovering in the air with its wings spread wide. The Ant King had chosen to retreat into the air, clearly adjusting its tactics after realizing that brute strength would not be enough to defeat Jinwoo. For Jinwoo, this shift was an opportunity. His heightened senses allowed him to track the Ant King effortlessly, picking up on the emotions radiating from the creature. The Ant King's nervousness had transformed into something closer to excitement. It had a new strategy. Realizing that overpowering Jinwoo was futile, the Ant King decided to focus on its true strength, speed. Contracting its body, the Ant King concentrated all its energy on increasing its speed. Its claws elongated into razor-sharp blades, and its movements became quicker and more fluid. Jinwoo watched the transformation unfold, recognizing that the creature had shifted to a different style of combat. Anticipating the change in tactics, Jinwoo calmly summoned his twin daggers from his inventory, gripping them tightly. The tension in the air was thick, both combatants poised for the next phase of their confrontation. With blinding speed, the Ant King dived toward Jinwoo, moving so fast it appeared like a blur to anyone watching. But Jinwoo was ready. The Ant King's claws slashed at Jinwoo with deadly precision, but Jinwoo dodged effortlessly, his movements fluid and faster than the creature could comprehend. The Ant King's eyes widened in disbelief as Jinwoo swiftly spun and countered, his dagger gleaming as it struck with relentless speed. The Ant King had no time to defend, barely keeping pace with Jinwoo's unyielding assault. As soon as Jinwoo's feet touched the ground, he dashed forward again, closing the gap between them with incredible speed. Both combatants charged at each other, their movements blinding, and when they collided, the force of the impact reverberated across the battlefield. Their weapons clashed in a whirlwind of sharp, ringing blows, each strike sending sparks flying. The Ant King, growing more desperate with every exchange, began to realize an unsettling truth. Jinwoo was as fast as it was, perhaps even faster. Worse, Jinwoo seemed to grow quicker with each passing second, as though his body had merely been warming up. Jinwoo assessed the situation, recalling previous battles. The Ant King was at least as powerful as the Demon King he had once defeated, possibly even stronger. But since that fight, Jinwoo had leveled up considerably, growing not only in strength but in mastery of his weapons. What's more, the Ant King's once invulnerable exoskeleton had begun to weaken under Jinwoo's relentless strikes. Hairline cracks spidered across its armor, deepening with every blow. The Ant King, which had managed to hold its ground at first, was now slowly being pushed back, step by step. Each retreating step brought more cracks, and with every fracture in the Ant King's exoskeleton, Jinwoo's confidence surged. Sensing an opening, Jinwoo pressed forward. Advancing 2 steps in a flash, he activated his skill, Critical Strike. Timing it perfectly, his dagger finally pierced through the Ant King's tough armor. With the Ant King staggered, Jinwoo unleashed a flurry of critical strikes, each hit landing with greater intensity than the last. The Ant King had no chance to recover. Its defenses, once impenetrable, crumbled under the sheer force of Jinwoo's barrage. A notification flashed before Jinwoo's eyes. His critical attack skill had reached its maximum level, evolving into Mutilate. The Ant King, now sensing the full extent of the danger, attempted to flee. Its wings buzzed frantically as it tried to take to the air, but Jinwoo wasn't about to let it escape. In a swift motion, he activated Mutilate, his blades flashing as they slashed at the Ant King multiple times in rapid succession. The effect was immediate and devastating. Each slash tore deeply into the Ant King's already compromised exoskeleton, inflicting immense damage. Realizing how powerful Mutilate was, Jinwoo pressed the attack further. His strikes became even more focused, each one targeting the Ant King's weakest points. The sound of his dagger ripping through the creature's flesh echoed throughout the cavern, followed by the Ant King's agonized howls. As the Ant King writhed in pain, Jinwoo capitalized on its vulnerability. With a single, precise slash, he severed one of its long black limbs. The dismembered arm fell to the ground with a dull thud, and the Ant King roared in agony, its body convulsing from the loss. Any semblance of pride or desire for revenge vanished from the creature's eyes, replaced only by desperation. The once fearsome Ant King was now reduced to a cornered beast, fighting for its life. Realizing it had no advantage left, neither in strength, speed, nor its secret weapon, venom, the Ant King felt despair creeping in. Just as it was about to lose hope, a memory surfaced of one final weapon in its arsenal. With a deafening roar, the Ant King called out to its swarm. The screech echoed through the cavern, summoning thousands of soldier ants that had been awaiting its command. This was its last hope to turn the tide, to regain its pride and bolster its army. As the swarm flooded into the den, filling the air with the sounds of their approach, the Ant King fixed a confident gaze on Jinwoo. It believed the overwhelming numbers would finally shift the battle in its favor. But Jinwoo, instead of showing any hint of fear, broke into a wide grin. The Ant King froze, stunned by Jinwoo's reaction. How could this human smile in the face of such overwhelming odds? Without hesitation, Jinwoo issued a command to his shadow soldiers. The monarch's domain, still active, amplified their power. In response to Jinwoo's order, his army of shadow soldiers charged forward, their thunderous footsteps echoing throughout the cavern. The clash was immediate and violent. A chaotic frenzy of dark, swirling shadows, charged with fierce purple energy, colliding against the relentless wave of black and red ants. The battlefield became a blur of raw energy and power, each side fighting desperately for dominance. At the forefront, Igris, Jinwoo's powerful lieutenant, asserted his presence with deadly precision. His long blade sliced through the horde of ants, cleaving through enemies with ease. Each strike was swift and decisive, and the very sight of him sent fear through the ant ranks. He moved like a storm, cutting down foes without pause. Joining him were the high-level orcs, known for their brute strength. Their raw power shattered the defenses of their enemies, their blades slashing and cutting through the swarm. The orcs fought with unrelenting ferocity, leaving trails of destruction wherever they moved, decimating the ants with overwhelming force. Jinwoo watched the battle unfold with a cold, calculated expression. Seeing the swarm being handled, he called forth another ally, Tusk. Jinwoo issued strict instructions to Tusk, emphasizing that the ants were to be his only targets and warning him of the consequences if any humans were harmed. Tusk, understanding the gravity of the command, nodded confidently. Holding the Orb of Avarice, he activated his skill, Hymn of Giants, and his size grew dramatically. Now towering over the battlefield, he prepared a massive fireball, his gaze scanning the chaos. Without hesitation, Tusk unleashed his next skill, Hymn of the Fire Dragon. Pillars of flame erupted from his position, engulfing the battlefield. The ants stood no chance against the inferno that followed. Flames rained down, annihilating everything in their path with devastating power. Taegu, watching from a distance, was left in complete shock. The sheer might of the creature Jinwoo had summoned was beyond anything he had imagined. Dongwook was equally stunned, feeling as though they were witnessing the work of a demon rather than a mere summoned beast. The destruction was immense, and their disbelief grew with every passing second. Meanwhile, the Ant King, once so confident, once the undisputed ruler of this domain, began to tremble with fear. Watching its army being obliterated, its confidence shattered. It could not comprehend how, after devouring everything in its path and claiming supremacy at the top of the food chain, it now faced an enemy far beyond its power. The realization that there was a limit to its strength filled the Ant King with dread. Panic set in. The Ant King, now realizing the futility of its situation, had no choice but to flee. In an instant, its concern for its kingdom and its soldiers evaporated. The only thing that mattered now was survival. Thanks to a healing ability it had acquired from devouring a human, Its severed wing had regenerated. Without wasting a second, the Ant King took to the air, desperately trying to escape. But Jinwoo, watching closely, noted the Ant King's newfound healing ability. He recognized it immediately, Min Byung-gyu's power. It was a skill no beast should have been able to use. Jinwoo quickly realized that the Ant King was unlike any creature he had faced before. It possessed the terrifying ability to absorb the powers of its enemies by devouring them. At this moment, the Ant King's sole thought was to flee, to put as much distance between himself and Jinwoo as possible. However, before the creature could escape, Jinwoo activated Commander's Touch. Instantly, an invisible force crashed down on the Ant King, slamming him into the ground with tremendous force. The impact was brutal, the creature hitting the cave floor with a sickening thud, fluid spraying from its mouth as it crumpled under the pressure. Jinwoo approached the fallen Ant King without hesitation. The once fearsome ruler of the ants, now trembling in terror, could do nothing but stare in horror at Jinwoo's calm, relentless stride. The fear in the Ant King's eyes was so intense that Jinwoo almost felt a flicker of pity. But there was no room for mercy. Stripped of all its earlier arrogance and pride, the Ant King desperately tried to crawl away, its body shaking in panic. Yet Jinwoo was not about to let him escape. Without wasting time, Jinwoo activated his skill Mutilate and caught up to the fleeing creature with terrifying speed. His daggers flashed through the air, leaving a trail of blinding blue energy as he unleashed a barrage of rapid strikes on the Ant King's exposed back. The sheer speed of Jinwoo's attacks was overwhelming, and the Ant King found itself caught in a deadly web of razor-sharp slashes. Completely overpowered, it had no chance to defend itself or fight back. In one final devastating move, Jinwoo brought the battle to its end. The Ant King lay defeated, broken, and lifeless on the ground. A notification flashed in Jinwoo's vision, signaling the conclusion of the fight. "You have defeated the enemy. Level up!" The message barely registered with Jinwoo as Baek Yoonho called out to him, his voice filled with urgency. The guildmaster's expression was grave, his eyes clouded with concern as he quickly approached. "Hunter Cha," Baek began, his voice thick with worry, but he didn't finish the sentence. Jinwoo didn't need him to. He could already sense the dire situation. Cha Haiyin's life force was weakening fast, ebbing away with every second. Jinwoo's face tightened as the weight of it all hit him. He had taken too long defeating the Ant King. Now, Cha Haiyin's life was slipping through his fingers, and he had to act quickly. His mind raced, searching for a solution. Jinwoo thought of using his Shadow Exchange skill, but there were limitations. It was still on cooldown, and even if it wasn't, he had never tested it with someone else. He briefly considered flying out on Kaisel's back, but he knew it would be too late. Cha Haiyin would likely die mid-flight. Desperation began to set in. Was there a healer from the Blade Guild still alive? There had to be a way to save her. A sudden thought struck him. Jinwoo's eyes narrowed as the plan formed in his mind. He spun toward the nearest cameraman. "Excuse me, can you turn off the camera for a second?" Jinwoo asked, his tone sharp and firm. The cameraman, taken aback by the sudden request, hesitated. "Pardon?" he stammered, unsure why Jinwoo would make such a demand in the middle of the crisis. "Hurry up!" Jinwoo snapped, his voice brooking no argument. "If you don't shut it off, I'm going to smash it to pieces." The urgency in his voice startled the cameraman, who quickly complied, switching off the camera while wondering why Jinwoo was so adamant. Without wasting another moment, Jinwoo turned to his shadows, issuing a direct and urgent command. "Shadows, go find Min Byung-gyu's body." Baek Yoonho's eyes widened in shock as realization dawned. He could hardly believe what Jinwoo was planning. The shadows, swift and efficient, brought back the decapitated body of Min Byung-gyu. Jinwoo examined it, noting the faint black smoke still emanating from the corpse. There was a chance. If the shadow could be extracted, maybe Byung-gyu's healing abilities could save Cha Haiyin. Jinwoo steeled his resolve and spoke the command. "Arise." But the result was not what he expected. A system notification appeared before him. "Shadow extraction has failed." Jinwoo stared at the message, confused and alarmed. The failure didn't make sense. His extraction skill was far beyond this level. It should have been enough for a simple revival like this. Worry gnawed at him as he tried to understand why it wasn't working. Time was slipping away, and with it, Cha Hai-in's chances of survival. Jinwoo considered that Min Byung-gyu might have resisted becoming a shadow soldier, perhaps finding the idea of turning a human into one morally wrong. But right now, none of that mattered. Cha Hai-in's life hung in the balance, and Jinwoo couldn't afford to be held back by such concerns. He cleared his mind of any hesitation and, with unwavering conviction, spoke again. "Arise!" This time, a transformation began. A cold wind swept through the cave as a deep, eerie sound, half yell, half scream, echoed ominously. Baek Yoon-ho, overwhelmed by the gravity of the moment, called out to Jinwoo. His voice trembled, and he grabbed Jinwoo's shoulders, his eyes wide with shock. What he was witnessing seemed impossible. Could Jinwoo really command the dead? As Baek watched in a mix of horror and awe, a black hand burst from the ground. It clawed at the earth, as if resisting the call from the darkness. Slowly, the hand pulled up a figure, a soldier clad in black armor, fully corporeal and pulsing with mana. The surrounding hunters stood frozen, their gazes locked on Jinwoo's latest creation. His power was unlike anything they had ever imagined. Jong-in muttered in disbelief. Can he really harness the power of the dead? Dong-wook too couldn't help but marvel. Jinwoo was no ordinary summoner. The moment Min Byung-gyu's shadow fully emerged, it moved on its own. Without needing any command from Jinwoo, the shadow, now a dark reflection of the healer it once was, walked straight toward Cha Hai-in. The figure, radiating faint energy, began to cast healing magic. A soft, warm light glowed from the shadow's hands, enveloping Hai-in. Slowly, her pallor began to improve, and her breathing steadied. Baek Yoon-ho watched in disbelief, eyes brimming with emotion. Was this really Byung-gyu healing her? He could hardly grasp the scene in front of him. Jinwoo, sensing Baek's inner turmoil, spoke calmly. He explained that even in death, he could feel the essence of what kind of person Min Byung-gyu had been. The healer's shadow had acted on its own, without any need for instruction, immediately rushing to heal Cha Hai-in. Jinwoo knew it was because Byung-gyu had been a kind and compassionate soul, and that same warmth still lingered, even in his shadow form. Baek clenched his fists, closing his eyes to hold back the wave of emotions swirling inside him. He understood that the figure healing Hai-in wasn't truly the Byung-gyu he once knew. Jinwoo nodded, recognizing the pain in Baek's heart. From a distance, the cameraman stood in stunned silence. Now he understood why Jinwoo had asked him to turn off the camera. This ability to summon the dead was something the world could never see. Meanwhile, Jong-in quietly reflected on the immense and ever-growing power Jinwoo possessed. The more battles Jinwoo fought, the stronger he became. It was a terrifying ability, one that left Jong-in both in awe and deeply uneasy. Baek, struggling to reconcile his own conflicted feelings, spoke to Jinwoo once more. He admitted that Jinwoo would likely face countless battles in the future, and that Byung-gyu's healing abilities would be invaluable. However, Baek also knew how much Byung-gyu had despised violence. With a heavy heart, he pleaded with Jinwoo not to force Byung-gyu's shadow to fight on the battlefield again. Jinwoo listened quietly to Baek's earnest plea. With a calm and gentle motion, he removed Baek's hand from his shoulder. This was the second time Baek had reached out to Jinwoo, but this time there was no command, only a heartfelt request. Jinwoo's lips curled into a light smile as he made his decision. Turning back to Byung-gyu's shadow, Jinwoo gave the command, "Rest." The shadow slowly dissolved, released from its form. Jinwoo knew Byung-gyu had already sacrificed his life fighting against the magic beasts. Keeping him as a shadow soldier didn't feel like the right way to honor his fallen comrade. As the shadow faded into the air, Baek's eyes glistened with gratitude. "Thank you," he whispered. Above, a helicopter circled the island, its rotors cutting through the air as it searched for the hunters on the ground. The co-pilot spotted them below and notified the crew. Jong-in, Tae-gyu, Dong-wook, and the cameraman began making their way to the chopper. Dong-wook carried the unconscious Cha Hai-in, while Baek cradled the lifeless body of Min Byung-gyu. The helicopter descended carefully, landing near the group as they boarded one by one. However, Jinwoo and Beck lingered outside, not quite ready to leave. Jinwoo informed Beck that he intended to stay behind. There was still work to be done. Beck understood, acknowledging that the raid wasn't over yet. Jinwoo had plans to clear out the remaining ants and ensure the island was safe for everyone. With a confident grin, Jinwoo summoned Kaizel, his dragon mount. He assured Beck they would meet again, then soared into the sky. Jinwoo flew over the island, hunting down any ants that had evaded his shadow soldiers. His mission was to wipe them all out, ensuring the island would finally be free of the deadly creatures. Meanwhile, on a ship sailing across the ocean, Japanese hunter Hoshino Minoru was visibly shaken as he recounted the horrors of the battle. He described the monstrous creature that had killed their leader, Goto Ryuji, and how it seemed utterly invincible. Fear colored his voice as he insisted no hunter in the world could defeat such a beast. Sugimoto, the vice guildmaster of the Blade Guild, tried to calm him down. He informed Minoru that the Jeju Island raid had already ended, and that the beast had been slain. Minoru could barely believe it. How could such a powerful creature have been vanquished? Sugimoto, remembering a conversation he'd had with Goto before the raid, mentioned a South Korean hunter named Jin Woo. Even though Goto had been confident, Sugimoto had a feeling Jin Woo was far stronger than they had anticipated. As the ship sailed toward the island, one of the crew members reported that the remaining ants were scattering. Sugimoto quickly ordered all units to prepare for action. Though the main threat had been eliminated, there were still some ants left, and they needed to be dealt with before the mission could be considered complete. The battleship sailed in formation, ready to engage whatever danger awaited them on the island. Across the world, on the eastern coast of the United States, inside the Federal Bureau of Hunters, a video had just finished playing. The footage detailed the recent Jeju Island raid, capturing the intensity and danger of the battle. The room fell into a heavy silence as the video concluded, the only sound being the faint hum of equipment in the background. Michael Connor, the assistant director, turned to his superior, Director Brennan, awaiting his response. Brennan, who had been completely absorbed by the footage, glanced at the clock. It was past 4 in the morning, yet the events he had just witnessed kept his mind racing. He now understood why Michael had come to him at such an hour. The reason was unmistakable. The conversation shifted toward Jinwoo, the South Korean hunter whose pivotal role in the Jeju Island raid had drawn their attention. Michael Connor voiced his thoughts. A hunter capable of summoning and commanding over 100 beasts was a rarity. His power was too great to be confined to a small country like South Korea. The potential that Jinwoo possessed was undeniable. Mr. Brennan nodded in agreement. Jinwoo's abilities were extraordinary, far beyond what they'd encountered before. They both realized that someone of his caliber could be a tremendous asset, not just for South Korea, but on a global scale. Brennan asked if there were any more details on Jinwoo's background. In response, Michael handed over a file. The file contained information about a prior incident known as the Sung Il-hwan case, involving Jinwoo's father. Sung Il-hwan had been discovered inside an A-rank gate on the East Coast, captured by an A-rank hunter named James. Initially, they weren't sure if he was human or some form of magical beast, but he had claimed to be a South Korean hunter. The incident left a notable mark on the Bureau's records. What made this more remarkable was the connection between the two. The man inside the gate was Jinwoo's father. This revelation was a game-changer for the Bureau. As of now, no other nation had significant insight into Jinwoo's immense power or his potential. It was a perfect window of opportunity. But Brennan, ever cautious, pointed out the delicate nature of international diplomacy. The United States and South Korea had maintained a long-standing alliance, and attempting to lure away another S-rank hunter could strain those relations. The memory of Hwang Dong-su's defection still haunted them, and a repeat of that incident would be disastrous. Even so, both Michael and Brennan couldn't deny Jinwoo's potential. The power he held was something too tempting to overlook, despite the risks. The conversation wrapped up with Michael pledging to give his best effort in managing this delicate mission, fully aware of the complexities and obstacles it posed. Meanwhile, back on Jeju Island, the battle against the ants raged on. Jinwoo's mage-class shadow soldiers continued their relentless assault, raining down fiery spells on the remaining ants and incinerating unhatched eggs before they could hatch into new threats. Watching the destruction unfold, Jinwoo noticed something unexpected. He was earning experience points not only for slaying the ants but also for destroying the eggs. This unexpected gain brought him a momentary sense of satisfaction. Curiosity piqued, Jinwoo opened his inventory, contemplating his next moves and how far his power had grown through the fight. Jinwoo's gaze settled on the Demon Monarch's sword, a powerful weapon he had earned after vanquishing the Demon Monarch in the Demon's Castle. The sword emitted a blue glow, crackling with electricity as if alive with power. Though it had been stored in his inventory for some time, Jinwoo decided it was time to wield it once again. His shadow soldiers were struggling to keep up, and the sword's devastating abilities were needed. With a swift motion, Jinwoo gripped the sword and unleashed a mighty swing. A storm of blue lightning erupted from the blade, tearing across the battlefield and reducing the ant eggs to ashes. While the sword lacked the overwhelming destructive force and stun effect it had when the Demon Monarch wielded it, it was still powerful enough for the task at hand. Jinwoo felt a small surge of satisfaction as he swung the sword. Though he favored his dual daggers, the Demon Monarch's sword was too valuable to remain forgotten in his inventory. After what felt like a considerable amount of time spent clearing the eggs, Jinwoo finally heard the notification he had been anticipating. Level up. He had reached level 100. Pleased with his progress, Jinwoo returned the sword to his inventory and set off toward the Queen's den. Inside the den, he found the immense body of the Ant King, still lying where it had fallen in battle. Despite the creature's death, Jinwoo felt a sense of unease as he stood before the massive corpse. There was something about the Ant King that seemed unsettled, even in death. Driven by curiosity, Jinwoo extended his hand and attempted to extract its shadow. As he initiated the extraction, the world around him flickered between light and darkness, as if a failing light bulb was struggling to stay lit. For a moment, the cave was plunged into total darkness and Jinwoo felt nothing, no connection, no energy. He wondered if the extraction had failed, but just as quickly as the darkness had come, it vanished, and Jinwoo was back in the light. A notification sounded in his mind, confirming the shadow extraction had been successful. Behind him, the shadow of the Ant King began to materialize, wreathed in dark energy. The embodiment of the Ant King's raw, terrifying power stood before Jinwoo. He turned to face his new creation, his presence imposing as he asserted his dominance over the powerful shadow soldier. The Ant King, now under Jinwoo's command, was an invaluable addition to his ever-growing army. Jinwoo examined the shadow, and the details about it floated before him. What immediately caught his eye was the rank, General. This was new to Jinwoo, as all of his previous shadow soldiers had been of standard, elite, knight, or elite knight ranks. The discovery of this new rank indicated the Ant King's shadow was far stronger than any other soldier he had previously summoned. Given the immense power the Ant King had wielded in life, Jinwoo wasn't surprised by the result. Satisfied with the success of the extraction, Jinwoo set his sights on the next challenge, the Queen Ant. Just as Jinwoo prepared to move on, the shadow of the Ant King unexpectedly spoke, stopping him in his tracks. The shadow, now kneeling on one knee with its head bowed, addressed him with reverence, calling him "My King," and made a request. Its deep, resonant voice startled Jinwoo, causing him to freeze for a moment. The shadow, in a surprising display of sentience, asked Jinwoo for a name. Perplexed, Jinwoo took a moment to reflect. He had always been aware of the loyalty his shadow soldiers exhibited, but this was different. None of them had ever spoken to him before, not even the more powerful ones like Iron, Tusk, or Min Byung-gyu's shadow. Curious, he asked the shadow how it was able to speak, something no other shadow had done. The shadow calmly explained that it had always retained the ability to speak, even after becoming part of Jinwoo's army. This revelation made Jinwoo think. It seemed that the Ant King's ability to speak stemmed from the fact that it had once been capable of communication in life. In contrast, his other soldiers, such as Iron and Tusk, had lost that ability when they became shadows. Jinwoo speculated that perhaps the ability to speak would return to his other soldiers once they reached a higher rank like this one. Intrigued, Jinwoo decided to probe further. asking the shadow if it truly wanted to follow him, given that he had been the one to kill it. The response he received was unexpected. The shadow did not see itself as having been killed by Jinwoo, but rather reborn through his powers. It expressed profound gratitude for this new life, vowing to serve Jinwoo for eternity, calling him both master and king. The shadow once again humbly requested a name. Jinwoo realized that this shadow was different. It was not enough to give it a simple dismissive name like ant or bug. He needed a name that would reflect its strength and significance, something that would set it apart from the rest. After a moment of thought, a name came to mind: Beru, inspired by an author who had once written a novel about ants. The name felt fitting, both strong and meaningful. Upon receiving its new name, Beru expressed deep gratitude and reaffirmed its loyalty to Jinwoo, acknowledging him as master. The bond between them solidified, and Jinwoo felt a sense of satisfaction. He had gained not only a powerful new ally, but also a loyal servant who would stand by him for all time.